people do say to you to comfort you, oh, you never know, they'll come back, and does a little bit more damage than people realise. They just need time. Or kind of more toxic than that, you think like, in this time, if I become better, they're going to come back, and you have an anxious attachment style, you know that your emotion comes over logic quite a lot. And so when I went to therapy, being given a logical explanation felt hard. I don't think he'd ever step foot back into my life. He knows he's not welcome. People very, 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 very rarely want to come back to a situation that is going to have to involve them talking about emotion, seeing someone get upset, realise what they've done to somebody. They don't want that to happen, so they don't come back. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. I hope we're all okay. Today is very early. I am recording this very, very early. It's 6:30 in the morning, and that is because I cannot even describe to you how much I have to get through this week. So it's 6:30 in the morning, and I feel like my eyes are still adjusting to this big, fat, bright light that is shining in my face. And yeah, I've been super, super productive by getting up so early. I don't think I've put this much makeup on this early in the morning since I worked on a construction site. And even then, I very, very, very rarely put makeup on my face. I mean, I don't wear a lot of makeup, but yeah, I was like half asleep doing my makeup in the morning, like, oh my God, this is long. But like I said, I've got lots to do this week, and sometimes this just has to be this way. I have to get all my recording out on one day so then I can spend the rest of the week and the evenings and the free time that I do have to edit, because editing takes ages. And I'm a one-man band. I do it all on my own. So yeah, we are recording incredibly early this morning. So welcome to my early morning. I am going to record and then I'm going to get out for a walk, which is what I usually do when I record anyway, because I literally sit and talk for around an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and a half sometimes. So I like to just basically walk in silence. After I have recorded a podcast, I get out, I get roughly around 7,000 steps in, which is usually I walk for about an hour, and I basically walk in silence. I don't have my headphones in, I just walk with my thoughts, because like I said, I'm talking to a camera for an hour. You do find yourself like not getting sick of your own voice, but it does feel weird sometimes when you sat here and you're talking to a camera. And also, I recorded on my Patreon the other day and I was explaining the reason how my new life and my old life did a little collide last weekend. And I was saying that sometimes these do feel like therapy sessions for me as well. Like, I sit and I talk about things that I have gone through therapy for and not like healed from, but I definitely talk about things that I have overcome. And so sometimes picking them back up and talking about certain situations, sometimes I do find that I'm exhausted at the end of a podcast episode, and more so on my Patreon because I talk about more emotive things over there. But I was just saying over there the other day, I was like, that particular episode felt like I was getting a lot off my chest about my old life and my new life colliding. I hadn't really addressed it or spoken about it in length. And I mean, I think the episodes are like 20 minutes long where I'm talking about it. So it's not like really heavy things. I like my episodes on my Patreon to be shorter because they cover deeper topics. And I think sometimes I just needed 10 minutes of somebody being in my ear being like, your world isn't going to stop spinning today. It's totally normal to feel like this. This is why. Have a great day. So I keep my episodes over there relatively short. And I think because I've come a long way in my healing journey, I sometimes forget that the stuff that I'm talking about massively affected me and put me in therapy. So sometimes when I talk about things, I'm like, God, why am I exhausted? after this episode, and I'm like, oh, it's just because I've sat and spoke for an hour. But actually, I think it's because I'm digging deep and bringing up things that I genuinely had to heal from, and I had to work really, really hard to get through them and to pick myself up every day and to work on my mindset and to learn coping mechanisms. And then I decided to share it all online. And I think sometimes I forget that. I don't think my listeners forget that, because a lot of my listeners are in the trenches. I get a lot of messages that are like, how do you talk about your breakup? Like, I can barely get through the day. And I think it's me that forgets that I am pulling up like quite traumatic experiences. And then I wonder why at the end of my hour-long walk, I'm like, oh my God, I could do with a nap. Anyway, welcome back and welcome in to this podcast episode. Like I said, I spoke about my two lives colliding. I had an interesting weekend. I was getting like interesting updates from the collision. I think I saw my ex's face on social media more than I have seen it for around 3 years. And I did some damage control. I knew that like his face is triggering, his laugh is triggering. So I was like, do you know what? I don't need to see any of this. I had quite a few of the people that were all away together on social media. So I did due diligence and I blocked stories and made sure that I wasn't being informed about anything. I just protected my peace a little bit. However, things still got through. I still got screenshots and messages sent to me, and it was just tough because, yes, you know, it's been 4 years. But I think when we talk about triggers, we don't talk about the person being the trigger. And I think when you go through situations that I've been through, I find his face very triggering. My weekend was really nice. It was my nephew's 3rd birthday party. So we had an amazing garden party at my sister's house and celebrated. I can't believe that he's 3. Like, genuinely cannot believe he's 3. And do you know what is even more mad? My sister was pregnant and gave birth. And the whole time I've had this podcast, I forget sometimes how long I've had this podcast as well, which is also really crazy. But yeah, I try to protect my peace a little bit more than I would have done at the weekend. And it didn't affect me largely, but I just kept saying to like my family, like, I haven't seen this man's face this often and this much, and I haven't heard his name flying around, and I haven't been told things like this since I went through my breakup. And it is tough. It is tough. Anybody speaking about an ex in front of you is tough. And you want to know the information, but you don't want to know the information. And that's kind of where I was at. I was being told the information. And I was thinking, I don't actually want to know this, but weirdly you do. It's really odd. It's really strange. And when people say to me, like, do you see your ex anymore? Do you bump into him? No, I don't. He moved out of the town that we lived in, and he very rarely comes over. He has no reason to come over. Sometimes I think it's funny because I do obviously come on here and I do sit and talk about it. I talk about it a lot more on my Patreon, but I could have not predicted this happening, and it was very strange. And I don't think this is a normal situation to be in, but it's over now, which is great. And I'm very grateful that it is over and it's done and it's dusted, and I do not need to be told, informed, screenshotted, anything again, which is great. Like I said, I talk more on my Patreon about personal, deeper things, and that is just one of the things that I spoke about on my Patreon. So if you do want to sign up to my Patreon, it is £5 a month. You know the drill. The links are in all of my bios. You get 2 extra additional episodes a week. It's less than a price of the coffee that you are probably going to buy this morning if you are up at the crack of dawn, just like me. I have recently uploaded my journaling guide over there. You can also get my journaling guide from the link in my bio of my Instagram. But today I'm building my Instagram channel, my chat, so I'm going to be uploading it in there. But if you've listened to this episode and thought, I don't know where to get this from, You can get it from the link in my bio, but everything I produce goes over to my Patreon first. My Patreoners get everything first. So that's been uploaded over there, and it actually ended up being longer than I thought it was going to be. It was 33 pages long. So it's like 4 weeks broken down into days, daily journaling prompts, but also I've split them down into headings because you might not want to do every day for 4 weeks. You might just want to go and pick up the journaling guide, find a prompt that speaks to you and work on that prompt. You also might pick up that journaling guide and think, oh my God, how do I do this? And you might just want to start small. So you might just want to start with like day 1 and do that one, and then do that one for a couple of days and then move on to day 2. The reason why I split it out into 4 weeks is because I know I have a lot of people that really enjoy journaling as well. So I know that the people are going to be able to pick it up and think this is a guide that I can follow because I journal regularly. But also it is tailored to people that don't journal a lot and find journaling really hard. The journal guide is now live. You can download it from the link in my bio. It will take you to my Stan store. You just have to pop your email in and then you can download it from there. So completely free. I just was very shocked at how many replies I got on my poll of people saying that they found journaling hard. And I think they find it hard because they don't know what prompts to use. And so I have covered all of that in the journaling guide. You can pick out a prompt, one that speaks to you on that particular day, and you can get a lot of emotion out on paper. Now, I talk a lot about journaling. Journaling is something that feels silly when you start doing it, but then literally becomes a lifeline. Every single hard situation that I've been through in my breakup, every single hard situation I've been through pretty much post-breakup as well, I journal. I journal it out. If I ever want to say something to somebody that I think, am I going to gain anything from saying this to them, or do I just need to get it off my chest? I journal it out. I have got some very, very, very interesting journal entries. If anybody got hold of my journals, I would be very afraid. There are some very interesting entries in my journal. Sometimes I can't even go back and read some of them because I think, oh my God, I must have been in such a horrible, horrible place to have written some of the stuff that I've written. But it is a lifeline. And when you learn how to do it, you will think, how did I ever get to this point in my life without doing it? So yeah, that is live. If you want the link, if you still can't find it, message me and just say, Lou, I'm listening to your episode at the moment. I can't find the link, and I'll send it straight to you. I really love being active on my DMs. And I really try and be active on my DMs. You get me a lot quicker on my Patreon. So if you do want to chat, I am directing people over to my Patreon now. As I'm growing, I'm getting a lot of DMs, and it does take a long time to go through, but I like to give everybody a personal reply. I don't really do generic replies. So yeah, if you did want to chat, you can head over to there as well. Anyway, today I'm talking about something that, yet again, I did not find any advice on the internet about. When I typed in on the internet, like, no contact, the internet kind of said, no contact's great because you give your ex time to think about what he's done or she's done, and then they come back. Because you're in no contact, you have made your ex miss you, and that means that they're going to come back. Let me tell you, wrong. Wrong. That is the most toxic mindset you can be in when you go into no contact. Because up until it happens, I'm going to sit here and tell you, your ex might not ever come back. And how do I know that? Because my ex has never come back. And if you are one of my Patreon followers and you're listening to this, you probably got a smile on your face if you have listened to the episode that I talk about. An ex did come back into my life after 15 years. I think it was 15 years. Was it 15? We ended up single at the same time. Very strange. But he did come back into my life. Very, very, very temporarily. It was kind of like he was in the single era of his life. I was in the single era of my life. I didn't know my arse from my elbow. And we went for a drink. And I think we went out for dinner as well. So when people say they always come back, I can only vouch for one ex. Bear in mind, this was an ex that I was with when I was at high school because I was like 13 years old. But I live in a very small town and I saw him in the shops. I saw him, it's like we always used to bump into each other at really random times of our lives. And it was nice that as an adult, we got to spend some time together. But if you want to listen to that episode, then again, it's all on my Patreon, and I really, really laugh while telling this story. And I still see him, and we still stop and say hi, but it just wasn't a thing. Like, it was literally like an interim, like, stopgap, like, let's go out for a drink and let's go for dinner type thing. And then it was just like not for us. I think he was looking for a relationship and I wasn't, and I think he really knew that. So he was really respectful in that. In the case of, he was just like, this is not for you, is it? And I was like, no, I don't really want to be dating at the moment. Like, I'm fighting for my life. Anyway, I think a lot of people aren't being honest online when they are saying to you, like, buy this guide. I will ensure that if you buy this guide and you do all this journaling and you don't focus on your ex, they are 100% going to come back. I let go of the hope that my ex would come back, I think around like a year after we went through a breakup, because everyone was telling me that he was rebounding. So, like, you believe people when you're vulnerable. You do believe people that have been through the same experience as you. Everyone was saying that his relationship was a rebound. And I was like, well, he's going to rebound and then surely he's going to come back, because that's what the internet's telling me. But that wasn't the case at all. And I think one of the things that annoys me about the advice on the internet is that they think that you pick up something and you read it and you think, hold on a second, this must apply to me because everyone's the same and one size fits all. So I just want to start off by saying that your ex might come back, but I'm telling you my story, and my ex has never come back. So if you are sitting in the same boat, or you want to preempt your ex not coming back, then this episode is for you. However, I do not want to be like every other Tom, Dick and Harry on the internet giving breakup advice, telling you that this worked for me and so it's definitely going to work for you, or my ex didn't come back, which means your ex isn't going to come back either. I don't mean that. I just want you to be prepared and armed with things and have things to think about if your ex is showing no signs of coming back. I could not have predicted my ex getting into a relationship so soon after we split up. However, it does not surprise me that his life has moved on quite quickly. Now I've been to therapy and spoken about behaviour and all the rest of it, like, that doesn't come as any surprise. I think I would literally evaporate if my ex came back now. Like, I would be so shocked. I'd be like, oh, I don't really know how to handle this. I always say that, yes, my ex was who he was and did what he did, but I also think he's quite self-aware. And I also think that he knows the damage that he caused to my family. I don't think he'd ever step foot back into my life. He knows he's not welcome. He tried to reach out to my dad, and my dad said, good luck with your future, but it's a no from me. I don't want to see you. I don't want to speak to you. Like, what you've done is awful, and no. So I think he kind of knows, but I want to talk to you about some of the things that people might say to you, because it is an emotional time and people do say to you to comfort you, oh, you never know, they'll come back, and it does a little bit more damage than people realise. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So silence does something very strange to the human brain. When you are left and somebody doesn't reach out or doesn't come back instantly and say that they've regretted the decision, absence makes the brain feel like it is unfinished business. There is unfinished business, and it makes you feel like you didn't fully close that chapter. It thinks logically, because it's like, oh, okay, well, this silence means that they're just thinking. It's just thinking time. This person needs thinking time. Where you're fighting for your life, you're saying this person has left and now they need to think about it. And the silence makes you think that it is unfinished and that they are going to come back. And you start telling yourself like that. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they just need time. Or kind of more toxic than that, you think like, in this time, if I become better, they're going to come back. And I talk about that a lot because even though my ex told me that he was leaving because I deserved better, I did not listen. I didn't listen. I heard, I'm leaving you because I don't want to be with you anymore, because you want different things and I don't want to marry you and I don't want to settle down and I don't want commitment and commitment makes me run and I don't want any of those things. And so if you decide that you don't want any of those things either, then great, we can have a relationship. That's what I heard. I didn't hear, I need you to go and find somebody that's going to love you like you loved me. I didn't hear, I have messed up and been keeping a big fat secret from you for a long time and I can see how much you love me and you deserve so much better. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear, I'm going through a lot personally and probably need to go and speak to somebody about it and I know that I'm going to hurt you in doing so. I didn't hear, I have panicked and panicked and panicked about committing to you and I should have thought about that before I put a ring on your finger. I didn't hear all of that. I heard, I need to change so this man comes back into my life, which makes me incredibly sad because if I had just listened to what he was saying, I would have probably gone to war with myself a lot less aggressively than I did. But when someone leaves and then doesn't speak to you, that silence creates a huge void. And you start thinking, oh, he's definitely going to come back because he's going to realise that he's made a mistake. And then when you go through your healing, you get confident and you start thinking, well, he's definitely going to come back because why wouldn't he? And I think a lot of my confusion came from, I need to be better. He's left me and I need to make sure that he realises that I can change for him. Then I got a little bit confident and was like, well, he's definitely going to come back because it's 14 years of his life. He's put a ring on my finger. Why wouldn't he come back? And you go through so many emotions. And I think what people don't talk about on the internet is that sometimes exes don't come back. And trust me, I know how it feels to search high and low on the internet for somebody who went through an entire breakup. They both went off, got help, went to therapy, came back, got married, lived happily ever after. You are looking for that because I looked for that. I thought if this guy goes to therapy, I go to therapy, we go to therapy together, we might be able to work through this. We can work through what he's going through. We can work through what I was going through. No, he just didn't want to be in the relationship with me because he wanted to be in a relationship with somebody else. I did not know that at the time. I had no idea that somebody else was floating around on the scene at the time. I just didn't. That just wasn't on my radar massively when he left me. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And I just think that some people will tiptoe around this advice because they want you to buy their courses and they want you to manifest your ex back, which we all know how I feel about those courses. And sometimes it just is not the case. And I think you start thinking, well, he's not going to come back because I'm unworthy. I'm obviously really easy to forget. I obviously didn't mean anything to them. But human attachment doesn't work like that. Human attachment is a lot less romantic and a lot more mechanical. And so I want to unpick that so you can kind of see what I mean about your ex not coming back and make you feel a little bit more positive, which is weird because it sounds incredibly negative, but a little bit more positive of the fact that they might not have come back or they might not come back. And so, like I said, silence creates this whole story that you can literally narrate yourself. If they do not reach out to you, it must mean that they are thinking. Your brain does not interpret silence as an absence of an action. It interprets it as a hidden action that you can't see. So because they're being quiet, you're going to start telling yourself they must be thinking. They must be thinking. They must be thinking. They must be processing. They must be waiting. They must be so unsure about how they feel. And the reason why I know this is because I did this a lot. And your brain, like I always say, is trying to reduce uncertainty. In this silence, you have no idea what is going on with your relationship. You have no idea what's going on in the breakup. You have no idea what they're doing. You have no idea who they're speaking to. You have no idea about anything, because once upon a time you knew everything about this person, and now you don't know where they are, what they're doing, who they're with, and you start becoming this person that is rewriting a narrative just to make your brain calm down and find some certainty. What you're not saying to yourself is, they are not contacting me. You're just not saying it. You're not telling yourself. And I know you're not, because I didn't think they're just ignoring me, or that he actually doesn't want to talk to me, or he's actually found relief in leaving. They are all facts, and they were all the facts. I was saying, he must be really struggling, he must be thinking, he must be like processing what's going on, that's why he doesn't want to talk to me. No, he literally just was not contacting me. And that sounds brutal, but it is the facts. And I don't mess around with facts, because I messed around with facts and I really hurt my feelings by messing around with facts and trying to put a narrative to my ex's actions when my ex's actions were literally loud and clear, black and white. He was not contacting me. And I think what your mind is doing is giving yourself a little bit of positivity. There could be a possibility of a reunion. Your mind is constantly searching for something positive because you feel so awful. And I'm not saying any of this is bad, of course, like you are going to feel this way, because no one wants to sit in a load of pain. So your brain's going like, if they think about it, if they process it, then they could possibly come back. So then you hold on to that. You are holding on to the fact that this silence is actually going to be something positive. And I think what people tend to forget is that most people don't reach out because they are thinking deeply about what they're going through. Most people don't reach out because having to have another conversation with you, they have to meet themselves and they have to explain themselves. And if they can't explain themselves and they can't explain why they're going, or they don't want to explain why they're going, or they're not being honest about why they've left, they don't want to do that. And I think with me, when my ex left, it's so funny because I obviously tell these stories on Patreon, but when my ex left, I think my realization kind of hit about 3 or 4 days after I'd slept in the bed by myself for like 3 or 4 days. And I remember texting my ex and being like, are you okay? Like, I'm really struggling. Thinking that he would be like, I'm really struggling too. And he was like, I'm going out for food with my friends tonight. We're going out for an Indian. And I was like, what? I didn't say a thing. I just messaged back saying, have a nice time. This is why I like the fact that I've kept everything, because I can go back and fact check sometimes. But I don't need to, but like, you know, if I needed to. And I remember getting this message and thinking, I've barely slept. I've barely eaten. And you're going out for a curry with your friends. That, to me, should have been a big, fat, massive wake-up call that this silence that I was hearing from him was not him thinking deeply. It was him in a state of relief because he had checked out 6 months before he left. And like I said, not to break down love or to try and make love sound logical, but an attachment in a relationship, you get attached to someone because of familiarity. You get attached, affection creates a dose. Emotional safety builds repetition. Every single time you get to embrace somebody or feel that love from somebody, and every single time it happens, you want it more and you want it more and you want it more. So when a breakup happens, all of that breaks down and that whole attachment system has broken down. And yes, it breaks down on both sides. And one person, usually the person that is left, is very much still in a state of attachment. And the other person is very much in a state of detachment, and they have had more time to think about detaching, because ultimately it was their decision in the first place. So of course you're going to see this silence from a point of view of like, you're having more time to think, you're having more time to process, and you're going to think that they're doing that as well. And it's not the case. It is not the case. Sometimes you have to get strong with yourself and quite brutal with yourself and remind yourself that this silence is a pure action, in the fact that silence means they are not contacting you, not they are going away and they're thinking about it every single night and they are really doing some deep healing work. Sometimes they're not. And in my case, he didn't. I don't think he really thought about anything. And I was like begging him to spend some time by himself and think about what he was doing. But then when time went on and he said that he checked out 6 months before he left me, it made complete sense as to why he wasn't taking the time to think. He didn't want to rethink his decision. He was 6 months on ahead of me on his, I mean, you could call it a healing journey. He was, I don't really want to give him that, but like, he was 6 months ahead of his life, and he was able to then pick up this new life that I knew nothing about really easily. And I was there being like, oh, I'm not hearing from him because he must be thinking and he must be like processing. And it wasn't. The reason why I wasn't hearing from him is because he had a whole other life to pick up and start really enjoying. I just want to make sure that you are not spending time obsessing over the fact that silence obviously means that they are thinking about it, because it would just lead you to being more disappointed down the line when you get nothing from them. And I got pretty much nothing from my ex. So that's where I wanted to start. The second thing I want to talk about is one-sided no contact. I talk about no contact a lot, but I want to talk about why no contact feels one-sided. You know me, I don't really sugarcoat a lot. So this might sound harsh, but no contact feels one-sided because them leaving is a relief. I cannot describe to you how hearing my ex tell me that a weight had been lifted off his shoulders when he left me, how that made me feel. And I obviously talk and I sit and talk about people being left feeling like they did something wrong, and how I fought for my life to be able to tell everybody that I did nothing wrong. He didn't leave me because I did anything wrong. He didn't leave me because he found someone better. He left me because he couldn't bear to stay in a relationship where he was hiding so many things. And when he said that a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, I automatically turn it around to me. The fact that he pays a lot for the house, I must be like financially like draining the life out of him. Or like because I had decided that I wanted to get married and all we were talking about was the wedding, was draining him. It wasn't that at all. I reminded him of a person that he didn't want to be. It's funny because that sentence alone stuck with me, because I thought, how can you not be hurt by this? And this is what I mean, that no contact feels one-sided, because for me, it was absolutely destroying me not contacting somebody that I loved so deeply. I loved him so deeply. It was like someone had literally got an axe and cut off my arm. It was like, oh, do you know this guy that you check in with every single day and that you tell absolutely everything to, and that is literally like somebody that you don't want to live without, and somebody that you've said, if you go, I go, like you jump, I jump, you're not allowed to contact him anymore. And honestly, I felt like I lost a limb. Like we were best friends. And when I think about my relationship, and like I talk about the negatives of a breakup a lot, and I try and mix in a lot of positives about my relationship, because I don't regret my relationship at all. I don't think it was a waste of time. I loved every second of the 12, 13 years that we spent together. The last year was really hard. Lockdown was really hard. But the last year was really difficult. But there was not one part of me that's going to sit here and be like, my entire relationship was awful, because it wasn't. We were best friends and we had the best time together. And for me, I not only lost my partner, I lost my husband, I lost my entire future, I lost my best friend. And I think if you knew me as a best friend, I don't think any of my best friends listen to this, but if you knew me as a best friend, you know that my best friends mean so much to me as well. And if it was any of my best friends that had just literally walked out on me and said, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, I would be devastated. I remember losing a very close friend of mine, like a best friend when we were younger, just from being young and going out, and we turned 18 together and we lost contact with each other, and it hit me really hard. And I do think about our friendship sometimes, and I talk about her occasionally. Like when I was growing up, I had a best friend. My relationships mean a lot to me, and I commit to all of my relationships and my friendships. And I go in 110%, like you get 110% out of me. And my attachment style was, I was anxiously attached. So when somebody leaves, my typical go-to is to protest quite loudly and be like, what on earth is going on? Searching for answers. Like, obviously to calm my anxiety down, I want answers. Whereas him going through no contact was a huge relief because of the guilt he felt. He didn't have to contact me if he didn't want to. He didn't want to sit and explain who he had become. He didn't want to explain why he left. He didn't want to admit what he'd done. And so I eventually got it out of him, of course, but he shut down. And that was because of his attachment style. He was an avoidant, and he is an avoidant. And so his attachment style would be to shut down and not communicate and not talk to me. And so I had this intense urgency to fix and to have an explanation and to have something to blame and to understand why I was going through such a awful amount of pain. And he had the urgency to run away. It was so funny. I was seeing this thing the other day on Instagram. It was like, just to let the people know who date my ex, he's a runner. And then she kind of like looks at the camera, and I was like, that is so true. Like, I just think somebody who is an avoidant, when things get tough and things get emotional and things get too much for them, they're gonna run. That's what they do. They avoid, so they run away. And it was funny because she was a runner, and she was like, yeah, my ex is a runner. So it had like two like meanings, but it did make me laugh. And avoidant people see running away and cutting something off as being a resolution. And I didn't know this until I went to therapy and was talking about attachment styles. And also I've read the book Attached, which is phenomenal if you are struggling to work out what attachment style you have, or if you want to learn more about someone else's attachment style. Learning about my ex's attachment style did calm my nervous system a lot, because I understood his behaviour more. I didn't give him the benefit of the doubt on the behaviour. I just understood why he didn't cope with things like I coped, with me being anxiously attached and him being avoidant. But he would see running away and saying, things are done, it's done, we're done, I don't want to come back, as it being like, that's it. And so coming back and being in contact with you is opening something that he's resolved. This is done, decision made. I'm off. I'm going. Why do you need to know more about it? Why do you want to know more? Because I've made the decision. The decision is this. I want to talk about it. So then they don't talk to you. So then they don't reconnect with you because they don't want to reopen anything. It's resolved. And so no contact feels one-sided. So when I was going through no contact and I was fighting for my life to not text my ex or not ring him, or every single time I spoke to him for work, not say to him, how have you been? Do you miss me? Have you thought about me? I was literally fighting for my life. He was like, well, we started no contact. Or when do you want to go into no contact? And no contact was a relief for him. And that was hard. And it is hard to hear. But it was a relief for him. Because he didn't have to face me. And he didn't have to face what he'd done. So when I learned that avoidance act this way when things get hard, then it doesn't take the pain away. These explanations don't take the pain away, but they allow you to think more logically and less emotionally. And if you're anything like me and you are anxiously attached and you have an anxious attachment style, you know that your emotion comes over logic quite a lot. And so when I went to therapy, being given a logical explanation felt harsh. It felt like the love had just gone from the relationship and it was transactional. But sometimes you do have to think like that, because when emotion takes over, it friggin' takes over, and then you get stuck in so many thought loops and you feel like there is no way out, and it is horrible. And they can still care. Like, I'm not saying that my ex was heartless and didn't have a caring bone in his body. That he still cared. He still cared about me. And I know that he missed me occasionally. Whether or not the information came from him, I had people saying, like, he did say that he missed you. Or like, he would say, I thought about that and I missed you. And that for me was like, oh my God, he missed me. But they can still care. But missing somebody and choosing somebody are two very different things. And sometimes breakups, because you're going through so much, muddy that together. And so you do have to think logically. You do have to think it's a human response to miss somebody, but that doesn't mean just because they miss you, they're then going to choose you again. I think the fact that he really didn't want to have to sit down and explain what he'd done. I feel like a lot of the reason why my ex didn't come back is because he was disappointed in himself and how he handled it. But again, that's me like searching for and trying to find a conclusion. I don't know that. He might have been thrilled with the way that he handled things. But you know, when you know somebody, I do think sometimes maybe he did think, God, I handled that really badly. And maybe coming back, I was reminding him that like he literally abandoned me and my family in the dead of the night on a Tuesday, you know, and I think he didn't want to be reminded of that. And so he just ran and ran and ran and ran, and he'll continue to run because that's what people with an avoidant attachment style do. They run. Again, going into this next thing that I want to talk to you about, it makes it sound like your relationship is transactional, but sometimes you do have to break it down like this and take away the emotion. I think what people don't tell you is that yes, you lose a person, but you actually lose something. But what you actually lose is your predictive model of the future. You know what your month's plans were. You know what you wanted to do by the end of the year. You had New Year's Eve booked in. You had birthday parties planned. You had a wedding planned. You had your children's babies' names picked out. You knew that you wanted to be married and go traveling, and then you sort of knew that children were coming in the future but not sure when. You knew that you were going to move into a new house. You knew that you had a house move planned, or you had a baby planned, or whatever it was. You had a predictive model of the future. And what people do not realize is that when you go through a breakup, that model is still active. So you will find yourself thinking, if I text them, what will happen? Because for so many years, you knew that you'd get a reply. You text them, you get a reply. Is your boyfriend or is your girlfriend? So you're going to get a reply. And on the basis of that, you then start thinking, if enough time passes, will they return? Or if I just become better, which I hate, or if I change, will they come back? This isn't you being delusional, and I only really use that term when I'm talking about life, because I think like you're allowed to be delusional in life. Like, you should hear the way I talk. And my mum sometimes will look at me and she's like, what? Do you really think that's going to happen? Yeah, I do, because I'm delusional. I'm delusional because everything works out. That's what I say about life. But this isn't you being delusional. This isn't you thinking, God, if I text, will they reply? You know, if I give them time, will they come back? That's not you being delusional. It's your brain searching for predictability again. But it's trying to pull you back onto the predictive path of having everything sorted out, knowing what you're doing for the next 3 years of your life. It is pulling you back because Uncertainty is a huge threat to your nervous system, and your nervous system does not want to feel uncertain. But you're going through all of that, and you think, oh my God, I'm going through all of this. So is your ex, but differently. So your ex is getting used to not contacting you. Your ex has thought about his future and how in the next 6 months he's probably going to sell everything and go traveling, or he's going to get into a new relationship with somebody else that he's been planning whilst he's in a relationship with you, or he's just planning on being single. And so his brain now is out of the loop of, oh my God, I'm going through a breakup, if I don't contact her or don't contact him. And with the silence and the no contact, that predictive model of like your future together has completely broken down and looks completely different to how it did pre-breakup. They're thinking about their future on their own, and you're still thinking about your future with them because your brain is pulling you back to something certain. Their brain is pulling them towards their certainty, which is that they didn't want to be in the relationship. They've broken up. They're now single. They feel relief. And so their brain goes to their predictive model, which is, okay, you've got the whole rest of your life to do whatever you want. This is new, fresh, exciting. Get out there. What are you waiting for? And that's where their brain's going, and your brain is going towards like, oh my God, I need to text them, I need to call them, I need to be better, and this silence means that they're going to come back. Your model looks like that. Their predictive model looks completely different to you. But the good news is, the more you stay out of contact with somebody, the more your brain will adapt your own predictive model. So like, that is what it's like at the moment. But in 6 months' time, when you haven't heard from them, it doesn't go to what happens if I just reach out. It goes to like, okay, my nervous system feels a lot calmer now. And this is why breakups feel physically relentless, because your brain and their brain are going through two separate things. It is two separate situations. Their brain may have already unlinked you to their future completely, and your brain is still stuck with them being in the future and what ifs. Their brain's not doing that. So yes, your heart is grieving love, but your brain is grieving predictability, and it is clawing and fighting for predictability. It wants to be able to predict the future because uncertainty is making you feel like you are completely out of control. And like I said, like, it makes love sound like so mechanical. But I know when I heard stuff like that, it made total sense that like his brain is going to be on a totally different trajectory as my brain, like completely. And so when I was thinking about like, oh my God, why is he not struggling? Of course he's not struggling. His brain's not fighting to try and find some predictability. He's got his predictability. It's there. He's got everything that he wanted. He wanted to leave. He didn't want to be in a relationship. And so all of his are pretty final. That's why you don't hear from them, because their brain isn't doing what your brain's doing. When I learned about this, when I heard this and I was sat there in my therapy, I was like, oh my God, no wonder I've not heard from him. No wonder he's not going to come back, because his brain's not going through what my brain's going through. His future's planned, done. His brain's actually buzzing with the fact that now he gets to think about a future without me in it, because that's what he wanted. The next thing I want to talk about is a classic. A classic. I was talking about this on my Patreon the other day. If they heal, they will come back. Now, I'm going to break this down for you. If they heal, they will come back. Heal from what? Heal from what? What are they healing from? You go and ask your ex what they need to heal from, and I guarantee they will tell you they are fine. They don't need to go to therapy. They don't need to talk to somebody. They're not healing from anything in their lives. Caveat, they might be. They may have gone through something that has made them leave. I can't talk on that. It's not something that I've been through, but I don't want to leave those people out. And like I said, it's hard to talk about something that I didn't go through. Sometimes people go through something traumatic and they have to heal from something, and you may have been in the firing line for that. I can't, unfortunately, talk about that, but there are situations where that does happen, and I didn't want to be completely tone deaf to people that are listening to this that have gone through something like that. However, in my case, it wasn't the case. And you will convince yourself that that person needs therapy. And did I send my ex therapists after therapists after therapists, which was very easy because my sister works for a charity that is counsellor and therapist heavy? Yes, I did. I sent him loads. I was like, you need to go and talk to somebody. This isn't normal. This behaviour is batshit crazy. Like, you cannot just leave somebody on a Tuesday whilst our jacket potatoes are cooking in the oven. I've just gone out on an innocent walk and you've managed to pack your life into a bag and left. Not normal. You need to go to therapy. And I also always caveat this. He may have gone to therapy. I do not know. But when he was going through his breakup, he did not. And why did he not? Because he didn't think he had anything to heal from. He, in his mind, to him and his mind, he did not have to heal from anything. So you being sat there saying, if you healed, or if he just went to therapy, if he just spoke to someone about it, I'm going to tell you this again, they do not want to talk about it. As your emotional intensity of your breakup reduces, it's very rare that somebody would want to come back and blow that up again. The less contact your ex has with you, the more they know that that emotional intensity is going to reduce, because you aren't having the conversations. You aren't having the arguments. They aren't being questioned. You're not interrogating them. You're not asking for answers. And I talk about on my Patreon about how I relapsed, because I did massively in like the June, July, after he left in Feb. I relapsed massively in June and a lot of July. I felt like I was going through my breakup all over again. It was horrible. And then when we sold the house the following year, everything became intense again. It was like I was being taken down again, because we had to talk about emotional situations. The emotional intensity had dropped. And so my ex didn't want to reopen any of that. And so when we sold the house, it was horrible. And I talk about selling the house on my Patreon as well. It was vile. I saw a side to my ex that I didn't think existed. And I was like, how have you been hiding this person? Like, how have you been hiding this version of yourself? Because it is horrible. And it was horrible. And he made the house sale unbearable for me. And at the time, I hadn't realised that a lot of his anger had come from the fact that he didn't want to get back into the breakup. He didn't want to have the conversations. He was in a new relationship. So like, those conversations he didn't want happening at all. And that's because people very, 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 very rarely want to come back to a situation that is going to have to involve them talking about emotion, seeing someone get upset, realise what they've done to somebody. They don't want that to happen, so they don't come back. And people think, if I just calm down, and I used to think, if I just calm down, I'm a self-proclaimed hothead. I have a temper. I hold my hands up. I do. I have a temper. I have a temper like my dad's, which means I can go and go and go and go, and I will erupt. And you know about it because I'm bringing the walls down. World War III will erupt. And I used to think, if I was less triggered, or if I acted more nonchalant, I wouldn't even know how to be nonchalant. I'm not a nonchalant person, but if I learned how to be nonchalant, does that mean that he would come back? He might come back. If I had less of a temper, if I was more chill, didn't challenge him on certain things, or, he'd choose me again. Wrong. So wrong. If you became less triggered, they would still choose distance. It would just feel less volatile. You would feel more calm. There's nothing to do with that. They would still choose distance. Because if I screamed at my ex, like, I cannot believe what you've done to me and my family. If I said to my ex, I can't believe what you've done to me and my family, he would still choose distance. That wasn't going to change. How I expressed my feelings had no effect on whether he came back or not. The reason why he didn't come back is because he didn't want to open any of the emotional wounds that he has been able to mask by creating distance, by not coming back, by not having the conversations, by not giving me the answer. I think a lot of people don't realise that one of the main reasons why people don't come back is because of the emotion that is attached to you. And what I think people don't realise is they don't come back because the emotion it brings up for them is that it's the emotion that is brought up for you. They don't want to have you stood in front of them, shouting at them again. So they just don't come back. They just avoid it. Finally, I just want to talk to you about how I have been able to move forward without my ex coming back. And I think the more you go through your healing process, the more you realise that you are literally putting your healing onto somebody else. So why I used to think if he comes back, the only thing I think is I feel smug. I feel like, oh, okay, so you did want me, or, oh my God, so you do think you've made a massive mistake. There is a revenge part in that, and you're only human, so you're going to feel that way. But like, there is that sort of thing that's like, oh, well, now I get to reject you. And it's not tit for tat, but you want them to come back so you can inflict the amount of pain on them that they've done on you. That's not the case. They're never going to feel the way that you feel because they're not you. So in that, I had to learn how to drop that and had to come to terms with the fact that my ex did not feel the way that I felt. He did not show emotion the way that I felt. And we had completely different attachment styles. And so the fact that I was so attached to him and he wasn't attached to me used to drive me insane, because I'd be like, oh, for God's sake, like, I wish you could just feel how I felt. And the minute you stop saying that to somebody, you gain more control over your breakup, because you realise that this person you're standing in front of saying, like, how could you do that? This person that you are standing in front of asking for questions isn't going to give you the answers. They are not able to talk about their emotions and be emotive and convey their emotions like you are. And so when you start thinking, oh my God, will my ex ever come back? I want you to instead replace that thought and think, for what purpose? I want you to ask yourself, what would I gain? What would you gain? And I talk about a lot about, trust and having someone come back into your life when they've hurt you that badly and all the rest of it in other podcast episodes. If you're quite far into your healing and you're thinking like, oh, I wonder if they see how well I'm doing, would they come back? I want you to remember how hard you have fought to get here, to be able to not wake up every morning and think about your ex, to be able to actually move forward and have some positivity in your life. Now, when I think about my ex coming back, it isn't a positive to me. That isn't a positive. If my ex came back into my life for whatever reason, I would really struggle. He's a huge trigger for me, and I find behaviour like that very dangerous. And so when people say, did you wish that your ex would come back? I did, for like the first probably 6 to 8 months of my breakup. I was thinking, God, like, I really want him to come back, but only because I wanted familiarity back in my life. My brain wanted the familiarity back in my life. I didn't want to have to think about a future that was so uncertain. And like I've said throughout this entire episode, it makes love sound mechanical. It makes it sound less emotional. But sometimes you do have to think of situations like this just to be able to make it out the other side. So if you're wondering if your ex would ever come back, I hope this episode has helped. If you are struggling with the fact that your ex hasn't come back, I hope this episode has helped. I talk a lot more on my Patreon. So if you do want the additional help or you want to chat to me, then head on over to my Patreon, sign yourself up. We can have a good chat. I've got some really nice friendships evolving over there, and it's just a easier way to contact me. And obviously you get the 2 additional episodes each week as well. If not, guys, have yourselves a glorious weekend, and I will catch you in the next episode. Look after yourself. Bye.